We've added a couple of additional people to our panel, and I'll introduce them as we get into it. First, Adam Thorp. Adam, thank you for joining us. Your bio you sent me was very impressive. I have cut it down slightly. Adam is Managing Director for Australia and New Zealand at Huthwaite and responsible for continuing the company's growth and market leadership in the region. You are one of the industry's most experienced authorities, practitioners and thought leaders in the field of strategic sales, marketing and account management. Thank you for joining us and supporting this event. What have you seen this morning and what's interested you?
Well, firstly, my marketing manager is going to get a promotion for writing that bio. I think that's fantastic. She couldn't be here today, but I'll make sure she gets the credit. Look, it's been an interesting morning, a lot of data. I guess when you look at that information, you sort of go, wow, that sounds really simple. In theory, you know, that's easy, but why do organisations really struggle getting this so right? You know, Craig talked about sales training. You know, if I agreed with him, we'd both be wrong, because you know, I'm in the business that training can fix everything, but no, it's not the case. I think we're just one part of a very complex jigsaw that's got to get right. It was interesting hearing the Oracle data because, you know, I put that down. My immediate thought was they were badly trained. It's easy putting people out into the field with the right information, with the right stuff, but at the end of the day, if you don't have the skill, then you're not going to get anywhere. Now, there's been a lot of data that was covered off here, which is great from a management perspective, an internal perspective of how to manage, and you know, as a managing director, that type of information is absolutely critical. But if I think about those that are in sales and those that are in the coalface, the company that gets this right, and this is a challenge to all of us up here and to others in the room, that can scrape the right data, render it up or shape it up in the right form instantly for a salesperson in the field, is automatically going to lift their productivity, their efficiency and their effectiveness. I mean, there were some horrific numbers there about how much time salespeople spend actually in front of customers. I mean, it's just horrifying to think that. You know, my sales team, and most of them are here, are going to quickly review some numbers when we get back to the office, but hopefully they're not going to be in the office, actually. They're going to be out selling. But you think about just a change in efficiency and effectiveness and skill in front of a customer can have a massive effect. And that data, as I said, the company that gets that right and that renders it up to a salesperson in the field is where the difference is going to make. Brilliant.
Thank you very much. The second person we've welcomed to our panel who didn't present earlier is Ben Shields. Ben's a consulting partner at Deloitte, having previously been with Peters Browns and Arthur Anderson, and became a partner at Deloitte in 2006, working in the consulting part of the business. Ben, what have you seen this morning?
It's actually been a very interesting morning for me. So I'll share a little bit about Deloitte just for a minute first to give some context, because we're a strange organisation, or professional services organisations are a little strange in that the people who manufacture the product are the same people who sell the product. And so from our perspective, it's a slightly odd sales challenge. We ask people to do both. Not so long ago, Deloitte wasn't terribly good at actually selling. But there are some things that we've changed in our business, and they're things that I see as we advise organisations as well. And the similarity with what we heard this morning was uncanny. And the first is this understanding of the process, and better a single process that everyone within the organisation actually understands. And by that, even just using similar language across the organisation for the various steps in the selling process. Secondly, matching that and understanding not so much how you want to sell, but how your buyers buy, and matching your process and the steps in your process to that. And one of the most important processes, given this conversation about yield being down, or the stats we saw about yield being down, and that was pretty alarming numbers. For me, one of the most important parts is very early on actually understanding the sort of the stage gates in your process and knowing, well, when should you qualify out of an opportunity? And almost that decision early on is one of the most important decisions. Qualify out early, because there's really only two reasons you lose in a competitive sales process. You were either A, outsold, or B, you shouldn't have been bidding in the first place. Right? You cut the leads out that you shouldn't be in, and you actually will improve your yield. The second observation I'll make, and it's certainly true, it's been true of professional services for a long time, I think it's now true of probably every organisation and their sales process. Businesses don't buy from us, people do. Right? They can get all of the technical knowledge on your product easily. You know? It's all out there, we all publish it, or they can Google it and get information on it. So it's no longer about being a technical salesperson. It's actually about being able to sell the solution. And that's challenging for two reasons. A, it often means multiple salespeople from across your organisation have to come together to provide a product to an organisation. Or even potentially they have to partner with people outside of your organisation to get the sort of solution that the client needs. And it's challenging for a second reason, in that it actually means you have to understand what it is that's motivating that person who's making the purchase decision on behalf of the business. And that empathy is something that is a critical part of the process. And it touches a little bit on what you were talking about from a training perspective, Adam. The second observation I'll make is really, major observation is then really about, once you've got that process, you've got to measure it. A lot of organisations, and Craig, you touched on this, don't understand how their conversion occurs, what their percentages are. And when we talk to organisations about that, they say, well, we really don't have the systems that capture the data. And that's true. The better your systems are, the better your information will be. But people underestimate how much information actually is in their organisations. You can do an enormous amount, and James Taylor, who leads our sales transformation, is in the room, so I'll share something here. But we actually are going through our own enterprise systems and looking at our everyone's calendar, everyone's inbox, and doing analytics across that to actually understand what's going on. You'll be amazed at what you can actually learn from doing that, and I'll leave that right there. The final point that I jotted down was really, again, this concept of reducing the noise. And it's something we're very actively doing inside Deloitte. We encourage every organisation we work with to reduce the noise. The amount of effort that goes into supporting the sales process as opposed to actually making sales is phenomenal. And the more you can enable your people, the better off you'll be.
Great. Thanks, Ben. Are there questions from the floor? You put your hand up, Raul's got a mic.
All right. Okay. Has anybody else heard that term before? There's a few people in the room. Yeah. It's also creating an environment where people can compete, and I suppose the best way of describing it is in a fun environment. So you need to there's a whole thought process around it now in terms of motivation of individuals. And the way that Salesforce do it is we use the leaderboards, and we encourage competition, and there's lots of awards, and in our inside sales area there's little flags that people can win for getting ahead of their competition. So yeah, gamification's a real whole thought process. I'm not an expert on it, but definitely spend some time, because it's an interesting way of motivating especially I would say probably younger salespeople. They're probably more they like that kind of environment. So I don't know. Yeah, does that help you?
Do you think it relates to both sales and productivity for people?
Absolutely, yeah, both of them, yeah, definitely, yeah. And it's there's a lot of there's certainly a lot of thought leadership around it at the moment, around how that's changing the game in terms of sales and productivity.
If you have a question, we have one. Thank you.
Also a question for Angela, but also, I guess, anyone else on the panel that wants to comment. So you talked about not only measuring the number of sales that are made by salespeople or calls that are made by salespeople, but the quality of them and the things that emerge, whether it leads, whether it impacts a business plan or an outcome. So I wonder if you could expand a little bit more on how you measure those metrics. People make calls, but how do you sort of measure what comes out of those, and how do you get the measures of the success of those calls?
Okay, great question. One of the biggest challenges, and I'll talk outside of Salesforce first, is actually analysing data. In fact, I was in a workshop yesterday down in Melbourne around exactly this issue. Often people don't know what they want to analyse. And I mentioned earlier there was 3 outcomes from a call. We actually know what we're looking for out of a call, and we actually measure what the outcome is. And a lot of what I see going on outside of Salesforce is, and certainly within companies we work with, is they use text data, free text fields and things like that. Well, you can't analyse it. There's no way you can tell whether it was a quality call or not. So what I'm going to say to you is, when you're thinking about analysing information, make sure it's absolutely clear what the potential outcomes can be. Make sure they're clearly defined, and it's in a drop-down box rather than a text-based field, and you can analyse it. That would be my advice.
Can I build on that?
It's a disadvantage of being on the end, Craig. It'll get you.
Quality is always a great challenge. The way that we've seen the most effective organisations measure quality is by measuring what actions the customer actually takes. That is how you really measure quality, because at the end of the day, they don't care about your step 5 in your sales process. It's an internal thing. They don't care about your pipeline, where they're up to, anything else. But it's about their intent to act and what they've done and what they've taken on board, which will actually give you the measure of quality. And one of the most effective ways to do that is through effective coaching and debriefing, observing in the field. There's obviously got to be systems that these things get entered into, but at the end of the day, unless you're measuring what your customer's doing, then it's not a quality measure.
Pretty much the same point. Is that, and it actually builds on what Angela said too about actions, and the a lot of our methodology and IP is based on buyer's journey, understanding what the buyer's journey is, and then aligning what your sales process is. Totally on board with what Adam said. Customers don't care what your process is, right? But your process needs to line up with theirs. And then what you're about doing with every contact, be it marketing or sales, in meetings, in presentations, it doesn't matter, is about progressing buyers from one point to the next. Right? So, what are we trying to achieve with this conversation? We want to move the buyer from wherever they are to wherever we want them to be. That's the objective. Did we do that or not? Okay, that's the data point that you want to try and capture. But I see so many salespeople go to coffee meetings, and what are you doing in that meeting? We're building the relationship. Fantastic. How do you measure that? Right? Progress the buyer from one point to another. I'm not saying that relationship building isn't important. Obviously it is. But it's a massive cop-out for not being structured in the way that you want to have a conversation and what you want to try and achieve with it. A salesperson's time is the most valuable thing they have. You can't waste it. So many do.
Great, thank you.
Can I just add one more point to that? Sorry. Don't underestimate the value of closing the loop after you've made the sale. One of the things, and this is a Deloitte specific point, but one of the things we did probably 2 years ago now was put in a client satisfaction assessment process, and not a survey, but actually quite high cost of, we actually send 1 or 2 senior people out to interview the client and say, well, how did we do either on the sales process, or to debrief on a loss, or to find out, and not the person that was involved in the process, but someone that wasn't. And that's important for 2 reasons. It gives us incredibly valuable information on what we did well and what we didn't do well. But it also often creates a follow-on opportunity to actually have another conversation with the client to take them to another opportunity. So that's appropriate in our business, but whatever that closing the loop is in your business is something that shouldn't be underestimated.
Thanks, Ben.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, just a question primarily for Adam, but Neil Rackham's been quite outspoken about the challenger sale model, and he thinks that might be the way that things are going. I just wondered what your opinion was on that first and foremost, and if there's anything else that Huthwaite were advocating at the moment. Yeah,
look, Neil's a strong supporter of the challenger profile for a very good reason. Back in 2006, we published a book, Escaping the Price-Driven Sale, which is basically that model. So what he's doing is supporting a method that he'd actually already created. It was just rebranded something else. And I think any salesperson that can create insight and value with their customer is going to do better. Where it's a risk is through skill, because if you just walk into a sales call and start challenging without creating the right environment up before that, then you are going to get marched out of the room pretty quick. And this is what we're finding, is that those that are trying that type of method without the base skills around questioning and really focusing on, it's not who you know, but it's what you know about them before you actually get in the room. And you find that unless you're skilled in that, and that comes through the ability of asking the right questions at the right time, it's a big loaded bazooka in the wrong hands. But yeah, no, Neil's a great supporter because it's actually his stuff that was developed years ago.
Can I just add to that? I actually like the concept of challenger, but for mine it restates a lot of stuff that's been around for quite a while. And to Adam's point, it's like the scalpel in the skilled hands. One of the things that I really like about challenger is this concept of rational drowning. Right? Everyone know what we're talking about with irrational drowning? Basically, you've got to hurt people before they'll buy from you, in a nutshell. Right? But there's a way to hurt them without getting yourself marched out of the door. And that's, so people, because they're struggling, because there's so much pressure to achieve and deliver out there, they grab these shiny new toys as they come past, and challenges that one of the more recent ones, and they latch onto little pieces of it without understanding the whole context, that you have to earn the right to hurt somebody, otherwise they're not going to like it and they will march you out the door.
Question down here.
I guess it's for the whole panel. What I'm looking for is if somebody can give us some advice on the cost of supporting the sales function. We talk about, Angela mentioned a team to present ROI in terms of offers to customers. Is there a benchmark that you can give us some advice today on that cost as a proportion of sales overhead?
I'm not aware of one, but if there was one, I'm not sure it'd be a lot of use, because every business is going to be different. For small businesses, it's really going to be an individual role of somebody to keep that under control. And as you get, you grow to be like Salesforce, you can invest in a team that can go around the world and and crack heads together. But it's going to be. Yeah.
Just on we have the ROI teams called Vision to Value. I can't give you the cost proportional, but we have a person in each geography around the world who actually supports the sales organisation in that particular region, and their role is to support the sales people in terms of putting together the benefits case, and they're very specialised in that area. Whereas salespeople generally, it's a skill that they have, but we've got financial people that are very skilled in that. So it really just allows them to do more customer-facing time. For us, it's all about driving up that percentage. But as a portion of cost, I can't tell you what it is, but we know that, and certainly the stats that Craig shared, is that for every 1-2% increase of customer-facing time, you're going to get the uplift in revenue, and that's what we're focused on.
One of the questions that was sent in to us beforehand was, when pitching, how do you avoid being seen as a commodity? Brett, you've been very quiet. Why don't...
So I think it comes back to, first of all, preparation. So understanding your buyer before you go in and pitch something. That'd be my first comment. And then when you're there, it's about understanding what's being asked of you in that situation as it relates to that buyer's industry, as it relates to who they are, so what's their role in the organisation, and then applying what you know as a salesperson to solving that problem or offering them value. And then also I'd say that it's about offering probably a provocative point of view, so being able to understand your buyer to a point whereby you're comparing whatever your competition is, you're offering a very provocative point of view around that and how that can drive value for the client.
Thank you. Do we have a question there? No. Last one. Thank you, sir.
Last. Just a question about sales revenue targets. Craig used an example of the bank guy that had this 100 deals, whatever it was. Just out of interest, what have you seen work and not work for organisations in setting what that target should be?
Okay, I'll start with what doesn't work. What doesn't work is last year's number plus 10% divided by 12, thank you very much. That does not work. What you've really got to do, and it's one of the initial ideas that's now being built into the telemetry platform that we've built, is to you've got to do it in two directions. There's what you want and there's what's achievable, and so much of the failure to hit target these days, not just collectively but individually, is because the targets that were set have never been checked against anything that made sense. For example, we did some work about 18 months ago with Google, and you would think Google had revenue down pretty well, but as it happened, in the enterprise part of their business, they suffered from the same challenges that we all suffer from, and they inherited a sales target. It came down from the US as last year's number plus 100% or something ridiculous, and we were asked to work out, given how they were converting, and they weren't measuring very much at all. Right? Their measures were marketing converting what they call leads to opportunities, and then what opportunities the sales guys were converting to closures. Right? Very simple two-stage measure, hardly any process at all. And when we kind of tried to unpack that a little bit, we worked out that no matter how many salespeople they recruited, they just couldn't get within a bull's roar of the number. Right? And so their target went back overseas with a set of statistics that said, this is what's possible given what we do today. And if you want to improve, if you give us some money and some resource to improve this by X% and this by X% and that by Y%, we could deliver this. That hasn't been around before, but that's really the only way you can do it. With the resources you've got, the effectiveness and the velocity that your process runs, it's capable of delivering something, and that should be the target. And then if you want to improve the target, if you want to lift the target, then improve the effectiveness of the process. And that spreadsheet's just like a simplistic representation of how you go about doing it.
Great. Thank you, guys. I'm very conscious of time. Thank you all for giving your time this morning. I hope that you have found some insights valuable today that you'll be able to take back to your organisations and make change. I want to thank our partners for the event, IBM, Huthwaite, Salesforce.com, Deloitte and RPM Group International. Thanks to Angela, thanks to Brett, thanks to Adam, thanks to Ben. Thank you, Craig, for your time today. Thanks.